Kia ora all. Hope everyone's having a nice night. Thanks for tuning in. I'm just going to go through the second part of section 1. I hope you've read in our beautiful book. If not, you're in for a treat anyway, doesn't matter. So I just want to reiterate what happened on the last section, and I will sum it up by this wonderful saying, which is in the section. The truth to be taught must proceed from the truth already known. That is great, because that's exactly what part 1 was talking about. Basically, pathways into culture will be foundationally based upon the truth already known in that culture. Okay, so that's a wonderful summary. The section 1 of the part 2, which we're doing right now, is Graham is really establishing what family of nations, basically, and talking a lot more about where Polynesian has come from. I did mention in part 2, the other part, about Deuteronomy 32, verse 17. Psalms 82 is a very good one too, talking about Babel and how every tribe has been given allocated areas and limitations and under a different setup right after Babel. So anyway, that shows that. I want to do 2 shout outs, only because Graham does it in his book. A guy called Dr. Bill Cooper, and he is specialized in finding links all over Europe and Egypt and Syria, and he finds links to how these people groups have related back to the ancient forefathers. For example, Syria and the people have linked back to Nimrod family line. Egypt is Ham. Again, it's already written in the Bible. So Egypt to Ham is Psalms 105, if you want to look it up. And Syria, Nimrod is Micah 5. So yeah, it's a very interesting study. So that's a guy called Bill Cooper, if you want to go into that type of study. The other one was a book that I would really like to get my hands on, is The Coming of the Māori, and it's by a guy called Sir Peter Buck, Te Rangi He Rua, and that was written in 1949. So it's a beautiful old book, and he talks a lot about how folklore in Māori was very much like the book of Genesis and rah rah rah. Okay, so back to section 2 of this series. I want to get you familiar with a word called Menahui people. So Menahui people were the settlers of Hawaii. Now I looked up Hawaii and I thought, oh yeah, sounds like Hawaii, must be similar. But it's actually, nobody's not sure where that allocation is, and whether it is actually a mysterious place, the mystic place, or whether it actually has physical presence. A lot were talking about the Tahiti, and where it actually might be the Tahiti is more of a stronghold for the forefather, the Tupuna of Māori, the Polynesians. So anyway, that's quite interesting. The lady that talks about it is Martha Beckwith, and she's from the Hawaii authorities. So she is probably could draw down a lot more onto, where this Hawaii and the people, the Menahui people, come from, because the Menahui people, they could be a little bit mysterious too, because some people talk about them as being shorter people and not, the Hawaiian people, real Hawaiian people bloodline is really tall, like, 6 feet plus. But the Menahui people are, a little bit different. So whether that is because they were very well respected and renowned. But anyway, Graham will draw down that this is the essence of where Māori are coming from. So in the book, Acts 17:26, Paul says, God has made from one blood every nation and determined their appointed times and boundaries of their habitations. That is worth meditating on, because when you think about it, the traveling to get to somewhere is very sacred, because God has allowed those people. He's allowed that opportunity, that boundary to be stretched over here for these people, and for them to be from Middle Earth, where Middle East is basically Middle East areas. He drew them out into the four corners of the earth. You have to be a sophisticated group of people, knowing like navigation skills that is renowned in those areas, because that was trade, that was business, that was money, right? So that skill alone is absolutely important, and to have the blessing of God to go here and there, and to settle and have your boundary in the area far in all the areas is amazing. So he sort of draws down on that, which is lovely. Says brave, adventurous people settling in islands of the Pacific was a privilege and opportunity, and it really was. It's fantastic. And this is quite a neat thing. He puts in here Acts 17:27, so that they, the nations, should seek the Lord in the hope that they might grope for him and find him, through he is not far from each one of us. So when we're establishing the new habitations, it's about trying to, obviously the thought was that they would grope for him, they would yearn for God. Graham also talks about two different types. Obviously there's monotheism, which is worship of one God, and polytheism, which is the worship of many gods. He says that it's very interesting from a study with another shout out, Dr. Wilhelm Smid. Yeah. Anyway, it's in the book. Can't pronounce it. But he's got this collection of volumes, and it's all about primitive cultures and how more remote they are, the more they retain the clearest traditions of the living God. And that's very interesting, because that means, so when they're not remote, does that mean they've gone into polytheism, and why would that happen? It's because there's obviously trade, and when you're going into the cities, there's more copying and hustle and bustle. So so it was interesting. It doesn't really draw down on that, Graham, but it's probably another study in itself, right? So it's said that 400 AD they arrived in Hawaii. This is ancient Hawaiians, which is the Tupuna Māori, which is forefathers of Māori. They arrived 400 AD, 400 years after Christ. That is amazing that they can actually lodge that as a fact. But again, they worshipped at that time the living God. They didn't have any other heaps of gods. So let nobody say that the Europeans introduced the knowledge of God to Māori. They did not. Graham also talks about how the clues of this, worship of one God is found. And it's because the Polynesians, they know how to consecrate temples. They were consecrating temples. they were ordering a priesthood. They had a proper structured priesthood. They had the tradition of the sign of the rainbow, you know, the promise of never to flood the world. That was still that was what they knew. And they so these types of things was all very traditional of temple consecration. Everything was a living God. That's where they were. That's what they wanted. The sacredness to be blessed by the living God. It's interesting to note that Abraham's hometown was called Ur, and it was a place where it was, you know, obviously they had knowledge of medicine, history, law, science. So that's interesting. They were sophisticated. Graham doesn't make a very clear connection with this, but I think it's very interesting because he talks about the example of the Europeans, Celts, the Brits, the Scandinavians. They trace back their lineage to Jether, the son of Noah. So he was the son of Noah in that sort of European side of things. Me. But the Polynesian, he doesn't actually say, but it sounds like he's saying that Noah, they seem to be coming from Noah himself. In Polynesian, Noah is called Nui. In Māori, he's called Nuka. So they are calling on this as the forefather. So that's a very interesting too. And he does say that stories and traditions carry through the theme of travel, right? So this was actually quite an interesting point because after the flood, there was climate change. You know, life shortened. But before then, there was a lot of lifespans that were overlapping. And of course he says like long life means truth about God is told and retold. When you get the example of like Noah living 600 years, that story is told and overtold. You know, it's keeps going. And this is just like blows your mind when you think of Noah's son Shem. Okay, so Shem is Noah's son, was still alive 75 years after Noah entered Canaan. So the strength of that truth and tradition was established then, and it was always, it says the actual events are confirmed over long periods of time, so we can be very, very sure of when a story is told and told and told and told and told, it's obviously true. It's true. The traditions keep it that way, either oral or written. It doesn't matter, but it has that length of story makes it true. Yes. So anyway, that's all for tonight. I just wanted to say thank you very much again for tuning in. We'll do section 2, part 1 of section 2 in another 3 days. So, hey, goodbye, kia ora, and take care of yourselves. Matiwai. See you later. See you again.